ICSOM's new series of monthly videos to feature our musicians of color. I'm Paul Austin, ICSOM president and a horn player in the Grand Rapids Symphony, and I'm very glad to say my guest today is another horn player, Javier Gandara of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. Javier was born in Puerto Rico and today is third horn at the Met Orchestra. He recently was a member of the Musicians Negotiation Committee, chair of the Orchestra Committee, and their ICSOM delegate. Now, I know you think we're just going to be doing horn talk today, like equipment, what kind of horn do you play, what's your mouthpiece? We're not. Sorry to disappoint. We're going to stick to the standard 5 questions. So welcome, Javier.
Thank you, Paul. Nice to see you, and thanks for having me.
It's nice to see you. What a beautiful background you have, I have to say off the bat.
It is. I'm currently on my son's farm in Lares, Puerto Rico.
Wow, tremendous, great. Well, we've got to ask the non-horn questions. Let's get started.
Absolutely.
So our first question for you is, do you recall the first time that you ever heard an orchestra? Could you tell us about it?
I went pretty frequently with my parents. They took my brother and I, since we were very young, to hear the Puerto Rico Symphony. They had Sunday morning concerts when I was growing up, when I was little. So they took us pretty often. And as you can imagine, a young child, I would sit through the concert. So I would say that the one thing I learned was to be able to sit through the concert and start to pay attention to what was happening on stage. The first vivid memory of an orchestra that I have was going with my parents. I was 11 years old. And like I said, I've been to many concerts before, but they're all kind of blended together. But this was a very special concert, and I felt it right away. And I think maybe because I had learned to go to concerts, I was maybe prepared to pay attention to what was in front of me. I thought it was just going to be another concert, and it wasn't. It was a Casals Festival Orchestra, and it was a really good orchestra, and they played Scheherazade, and that was different. That changed everything for me. And it was the summer before I was going to start in a music school. I was ready to pick up I was going to sign up for the clarinet as soon as I got to school. So it was, I remember listening to a lot of music, buying records already. It was mostly pop stuff, but some orchestral piece. And I remember going and buying a recording of Scheherazade immediately after that concert. So it really made an impact.
Wow. So, I mean, Scheherazade has the tremendous clarinet part. So my next question is, what led you away from the clarinet and to the horn?
Interesting. I heard somebody play the horn. When I got to school, there was a demonstration for us of all the instruments. And so I heard the horn, but then I heard, back then he was in the 9th grade, so 3 years older than me. And this fellow was playing Mozart Concerto. And when I heard the horn, I immediately knew that was the instrument for me. I forgot about the clarinet in seconds. And I went and signed up for the French horn.
Wow, Mozart Horn Concerto. That's just tremendous. That's great.
Yeah. It was a good player. And I remember, I still look up to him. He's a really good musician. He plays in the Puerto Rico Symphony now. And he became a good friend, and he was a big influence in my education and my playing. And he was really into playing, and he knew a lot. He played a lot of important recordings that I still have and cherish today, like the Concerto. It was a French version of the Concerto, but it was Mahler symphonies. He introduced me to Mahler symphonies and Strauss tone poems. You can imagine, when you're just starting playing and you're listening to all these recordings. So it was very motivating.
Well, that really leads to our next question, because I'm curious if there was an aha moment when you realized that you wanted to become a professional musician?
That happened pretty organically. I think that I was lucky that in my school there was a group of players who were really serious about their studies, the musical studies, and they're all to this day really, really good players. Many of the members that are of the Puerto Rico Symphony now, the tuba player was in my graduating class. One of my colleagues at the Met, Pedro Diaz, English horn, was a oboe player who was actually the brother of the horn player that I was so inspired by. So we work together, every day at the Met now. Um, so I was very lucky to have these people to look up to and to play with and for. And I was very fortunate that I won a job. It was a 1-year position to play assistant when I was in the 10th grade with the Puerto Rico Symphony. And then the year after that, I got what ended up being a 2-year position to play third horn with the orchestra, because one of the members had gone to up to Northwestern to do his master's with Dale Clemenger. And I had the opportunity to play full time with an orchestra. So I think that I never, there was no question in my mind that this is what I wanted to do. And after having that experience of playing third horn, that's actually what I wanted to play. That was always my favorite position in the orchestra. So it ended up working out pretty well.
Yeah, because look where you are today, third horn in the Met
Right.
Opera Orchestra. That's
Right.
tremendous. So you've been in the Met Opera Orchestra as a member since 1999. Is there one special concert that you will always remember?
There are a few. There are some. I'm happy to say that they are some real highlights of my time at the Met. There was a Verdi Requiem with Levine that we did in Carnegie, and also took on tour to Japan. That was very, very special. Um, there was a Parsifal with Daniel Gatti conducting. Both are concerts with Valery Gergiev at the Carnegie. One was Shostakovich Fourth Symphony, and the other was Night on the Bald Mountain and Pictures and an Exhibition. That I felt that there was something extraordinary, way above the norm of what we're used to going on, and I was able to really appreciate that. And there are things, those always stick in my mind.
I hadn't asked you that question before, and for some reason when I was preparing, I thought you might say Verdi Requiem. So that's really, because I heard a clip of the Verdi Requiem from, I think it was about a year ago, or 2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It sure sounded tremendous.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great piece, and just the soloists were just fantastic. There was, a group of people who were really in their prime back in 2001, and it was pretty spectacular.
And it was during one of your first years, so that must have really been thrilling.
Yeah. There are, of course, many productions of operas that I remember that were pretty special, but those really stand out. I think Meistersinger with Levine was one of them as well.
Final question: if today's Javier Gandara could give a piece of advice to himself during his student days, what would that be?
I would say to spend more time practicing the things I did not do well. And it's a difficult question, because and it is a tricky one to answer, because what I realize is that many times we don't realize, we're not aware of the things that we don't do as well, right? And it's because it happens very, very easy for us to feel good about some of the things that we do, and then, of course, because we feel good about them, we want to do them more. So we tend to spend our time practicing the things that we already do well. Mm-hmm. And it's not a conscious decision, really. It takes some time, and it takes the help of others to who you put your trust in, to point out the things that you need to work on. It wasn't until I got to Juilliard that my teacher there, Ranier Denkinis, said, I've been impressed before. I'm never impressed by anybody anymore. All I can think of when I hear somebody is what they need, which was interesting. And he had a list of things for me to work on. And I remember thinking, oh, that's odd. I didn't know I didn't do that well. And then I started paying attention, and he was absolutely right. So that helped me a lot. And also some of my colleagues who throughout, people that have been very influential in my playing, even after my student years or during my student years, or that transition from student to professional. Michelle Baker was one of those people for me, that she had, one of the reasons I was always impressed by her, we went to Juilliard at the same time, was that she always seemed unflappable, always prepared. Nothing seemed difficult for her. And I thought it was just that, everything was easy naturally for her. But it wasn't. It's that she was very mature and she prepared very well. And she learned that lesson before I did, of really spending most of their practicing time on the things that they didn't naturally do, or didn't come easy to them. So finding that balance is crucial. And I wish I would have, like Michelle, concentrated on that earlier. But we're all different. I realize that our paths are okay. I've learned to be patient, and I think that's one of the things that everybody should understand as well, is that we all mature at different times. And it's not a race. Some people get their best job when they're 22, and others take longer, and that's okay.
That's great advice. It really is. Nice. So we're finished with the questions, but I want to have an opportunity for you, if there's anything that you'd like to add, something that you'd like for our listeners to be able to know about you.
I would share maybe just a general piece of advice, and I think, it is very general and it seems very obvious, but I would say that in our musical journey, one of the things that help us grow the most is the influence that we get from our fellow musicians. So I think that when we're young, we think we're going to get everything from our teachers. And as I mature, I realize that it wasn't really from the teachers that we saw once a week. It was from the people that we played with every day. And the sooner we realize that we cannot only root for ourselves, but we have to root for everybody that's serious about music. And we can learn something from absolutely everybody, especially those of us, who, the people that we surround ourselves with, who are committed and serious about the study of music. Not only for me, it was, I learned valuable lessons from people who were not necessarily horn players, but I also learned a ton from horn players, of course. So, but I think keeping that open mind and being paying attention, listening to music, and rooting for other people. What I mean by that is, let yourself be inspired by your peers. I think that is something that is not only motivating, right, to work and to keep striving to be better, but it's a resource that if it goes on top, it's a huge waste.
Well, that's a great final thought. Thanks so much for sharing that. And with that,
absolutely.
With that, we wrap up our conversation with ICSOM musician Javier Gandara. Javier, thank you so much for sitting down with us today so ICSOM could get to know you a bit more.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Paul.